Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Imagine this. What if the person you're sharing your life with, your romantic partner, could actually change how much your genes influence your behavior?
Yeah, it sounds a bit like science fiction, doesn't it?
It really does.
Right.
But there's this fascinating new study looking at exactly that, specifically how your partner might, turn up or turn down your genetic risk for alcohol problems.
Exactly. It's research from Virginia Commonwealth University and Rutgers University, and today we're going to dig into their scientific paper. It explores how partner characteristics affect someone's genetic tendency towards unhealthy drinking, especially binge drinking.
And we've also got a health news article on it, right, to help us sort of pull out the main points.
That's right. So the core source is this study that analyzed data from Finnish twins, twins who were in long-term relationships.
Okay, Finnish twins. Why twins?
Well, the twin study design is really key here. By comparing identical twins, who share basically all their genes, with fraternal twins, who share about half, like regular siblings.
You can start to untangle what's down to genes and what's more about the environment.
Precisely. So they looked at these twins in their 30s, their partners too, focusing on alcohol use, smoking, even personality and mental health.
Got it. So our mission today is to unpack all this, make it clear how these relationships might interact with our biology in ways we maybe don't expect.
Yeah, moving beyond just genes and environment matter to how they might interact specifically through your partner.
So what was the study really trying to figure out? What was the core question?
The main purpose was to see if specific things about a romantic partner, their habits, their personality, could influence how much a person's genes contribute to their risk of, well, risky drinking behaviors.
Like binge drinking.
Exactly. Binge drinking was a key focus. There was already some research suggesting that just being in a relationship might be somewhat protective for people genetically prone to risky drinking.
Okay.
So this study wanted to pinpoint which partner traits might be making that difference.
Right. Drilling down into the specifics, how did they actually do it? You mentioned the Finnish twins.
Yes, the Finn Twins 16 study. It's a
Yeah.
big long-term project. They used anonymized data from that.
Okay.
They focused on twins in their 30s, already in long-term relationships, and who had a history of alcohol use. The data came from surveys filled out by about 1,620 twins and their partners.
1,600 pairs. That's quite a lot. What did the surveys ask?
A range of things. Drinking habits, of course, frequency, binge drinking, also smoking habits,
Okay.
and personality traits,
Hmm.
using the Big Five inventory that measures things like extroversion, conscientiousness.
The standard personality dimension.
Exactly. And also mental health status, specifically psychological distress, using something called the General Health Questionnaire.
So a pretty comprehensive picture of the individuals and their partners.
Yes. And then using that twin comparison, identical versus fraternal, they could estimate the heritability, meaning how much genetics contribute to differences in drinking behavior between people. And finally, they use statistical modeling, fancy math basically, to see if the partner's characteristics change the strength of that genetic influence on the twins' drinking.
Okay, so here comes the big reveal. What did they actually find?
Well, some findings were kind of expected, confirming previous work. Like people were more likely to drink alcohol and binge drink if their partners also drank frequently or smoked.
That makes intuitive sense. Shared habits, social environment.
Right. And this link was apparently stronger for the male twins in the study.
Interesting. But what about the interaction between genes and the partner? That was the novel part, wasn't it?
That's where it gets really interesting, yeah. They found that the person's genetic risk for binge drinking seemed to have a bigger impact.
It was amplified.
Exactly, amplified, if their partner had certain traits.
Like what?
Okay, so the genetic risk was stronger if the partner smoked cigarettes more often, was less conscientious, meaning maybe less organized, less self-disciplined,
Okay.
was more extroverted, reported higher neuroticism, that's a tendency toward anxiety, moodiness,
Right, negative emotion.
and also reported higher psychological distress generally.
Wow. So if your partner smokes, is maybe a bit disorganized, outgoing, but also kind of anxious, your own genetic tendency towards binge drinking might actually express itself more strongly.
That's what the findings suggest. It's
Yeah.
like those partner characteristics create an environment or maybe reflect an environment where the underlying genetic vulnerability gets, well, nudged forward.
That's a powerful thought. Your partner isn't just, sharing the couch. Their traits could be interacting with your genes.
It seems so. But then there was a twist.
Oh.
Yeah, something surprising. They found that the genetic influence, the heritability of binge drinking, was actually less strong.
Weaker.
Weaker, yes, for people whose partners reported drinking alcohol frequently themselves.
Hey, that seems backwards. If your partner drinks a lot, wouldn't that increase the chance your own risky genes kick in?
You'd think so. That's why it surprised their researchers. Their interpretation or hypothesis is that maybe the partner's actual drinking behavior creates such a strong environmental pull.
Like a direct social influence.
Exactly. A direct environmental influence that it might actually overshadow the person's own genetic predisposition in that specific context.
So the immediate social environment of my partner drinks often might be a stronger driver than the I have genes for this factor in that specific case.
That's the idea they put forward. It suggests the interplay is really complex. Sometimes partner traits amplify genetic risk. Sometimes partner behavior might exert a stronger, more direct environmental effect.
Okay, this is fascinating stuff. What are the bigger implications here? Why should you, listening at home, care about this?
I mean, it really underscores how deeply our romantic partners can shape our health and well-being, often in ways we don't even realize. It's not just about relationship satisfaction. It's potentially influencing how our own biology plays out.
Right. It's not just about shared pizza toppings. It's potentially about shared vulnerabilities or how those vulnerabilities manifest.
Exactly. And think about the practical side. For therapists, maybe.
How so?
Well, this could help tailor couples therapy or alcohol interventions. Current approaches often focus heavily on the relationship dynamics themselves, communication, conflict.
Right.
But this research suggests maybe we also need to pay closer attention to the individual characteristics of each partner, their personality, their own substance use, their mental health, because those factors seem to directly influence the other person's risk.
So it's not just how do you two interact, but also who are you individually and how does that affect your partner's predispositions?
Precisely. And it implies that even in generally healthy, happy relationships, these individual partner factors can still have a noticeable impact.
Which also gives individuals maybe more to think about when choosing partners or navigating existing relationships, especially if health risks like alcohol use are a concern.
It empowers you with a bit more understanding of those subtle dynamics.
Now, we always need to talk about limitations. No study is perfect. What should we keep in mind about this one?
Definitely. One thing is that the study looked at cohabiting couples, people living together. They didn't measure how long the relationships had actually lasted.
Ah, so maybe relationship duration makes a difference?
It could. That's an open question for future research.
Well-
Also, the analysis didn't factor in parenthood.
And having kids often changes drinking patterns, right?
It does, yeah. So that's another variable not accounted for here that could affect partner influences.
Okay. And the Finnish context. Does it apply elsewhere?
That's the big question of generalizability. The data is from Finland. Cultural norms around alcohol and relationships differ across the world. So we need to be cautious about assuming these exact findings hold true everywhere. Although the researchers do note that general patterns of alcohol use and problems in Finland aren't wildly different from other parts of Europe or the U.S. So there's reason to think it might be relevant more broadly, but it still needs testing in diverse populations.
So, good findings, strong methodology with the twin design, but context matters and more research is needed.
Absolutely. It's a really important piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture yet.
What do the researchers themselves say about it? Any key quotes or insights from them?
Yeah, Mallory Stevenson, she's a postdoctoral fellow at VCU's Virginia Institute for Psychiatric and Behavioral Genetics, one of the study authors.
Okay.
She really emphasized the complicated and unforeseen ways that spouses and long-term partners can shape our health and well-being.
Complicated and unforeseen, that sums it up nicely.
It does. And she also pointed out that while we know genes account for maybe half the risk for alcohol use disorder, the influence of those genes isn't set in stone. It can change depending on the environment.
And this study highlights the romantic partner as a key part of that environment.
Exactly. The other lead researcher, Jessica Salvatore, now at Rutgers, co-led the work. And the fact it's published in Clinical Psychological Science, a peer-reviewed journal, speaks to its quality.
Right, it went through scientific scrutiny.
And Dr. Stevenson also mentioned how genuinely surprised they were by that finding we discussed, where a partner's frequent drinking seemed to lessen the impact of genetic risk. It really underscored for them how powerful those environmental effects can sometimes be.
So, bringing it all together then, what's the main takeaway message for you listening?
I think the core idea is just how intertwined we are with our partners, right down to the level of how our genes get expressed. It's not just shared habits. Their traits, their behaviors can subtly shift the landscape of our own vulnerabilities.
It really makes you think differently about the dynamics in close relationships, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
So here's a final thought to chew on. If this is true, if your partner's characteristics can interact with your own biology, how might a deeper, maybe more conscious understanding of both your partner's traits and your own, how might that lead to, say, more informed choices or better support within your relationship, especially around potential health issues?
That's a great question. It really opens up a new way to think about navigating those intimate bonds and supporting each other.
Definitely food for thought. And if this deep dive has caught your interest,
Then we definitely encourage you to look up the original study. It's in the journal Clinical Psychological Science. Getting into the details can offer even more perspective on these kind of invisible forces shaping our lives and relationships.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.